Hi guys, today I'm going to talk about No Better Love by Elizabeth. So the beginning of the book take place in 1800s. Abraham Lincoln was president, and his son Robert fell in love with a maid. Her name at the time was Gemma. So Robert fell in love with Gemma at first sight. Gemma is a young maid. She's black and he's white. So slaves were not allowed to interact with their masters unless the masters allowed it. But however, Robert being young and he was impressionate. They had their relationship, which really wasn't much of a relationship. They was just saying hi to each other, like meet and greet. He would try to find ways to get into the same room that she was in because he just wanted to be around her. Her presence bring him joy, and he was always happy around her. So around the time he requested the headmaid to have Georgette come to his room. When she did, she was a little bit like she looked a little bit disarray, like something was wrong. So he was like, "What's wrong?" It's like she said nothing. He said, "What's wrong? Something's wrong." She said nothing. So eventually she gave in and said that the Secretary of State tried to was harassing her. So he said, "Okay, fine, don't worry, get some rest, I'll take care of it." So she got some rest, and he went to threaten him. He's like, "If you touch her, breathe her, look at her the wrong way, I'll kill you." His mom heard it, and his father heard it, and they weren't pleased with the whole relationship, basically altogether. But then he was wondering, like, why weren't you pleased with the relationship when you just the one that freed all slave of all this stuff? So what's going on now? Anyway, around the same time, President Lincoln was assassinated, and then he was so upset, and he was like disarray, and he was upset, and she was comforting him, and they fell asleep together, and his mother found her in the room with him, and basically the next day she was gone, and he was like wondering what's going on. However, before she left, the night before, he made a promise to her. He said, "Whether it's in this life or another life, we will be together." So she was like, "You can't make that promises because we can't, nothing's set in stone." He said, "Don't worry, I'll make it happen." So okay, fine. She made it. He said, but her mother sent her away. His mother, sorry, sent her away. So he never saw her again. So he continued living his life until he was about 82, and he disappeared. And that's all you heard from him. Excuse me, in the beginning of the book. So now fast forward to present now. Now the book now is Lorenzo and Gemma. So basically, Robert is reincarnated in Lorenzo's body, and Georgette is reincarnated in Gemma's body. So they didn't really know that because Lorenzo kept on having out of body experience. In one minute he was there, the next minute he wasn't. So they was wondering what was going on. Anyway, before I get that, Robert and I'm sorry, Lorenzo and Gemma were dating when she was younger. She was about 18, 19, and he was about 21, 22. He took her virginity, and because his father was so evil, his father was just pure evils like the devil himself, he had to break up with Gemma because he didn't want his father to hurt her while he wasn't around. So he broke up with Gemma, and then coincidentally, the minute he broke up with her, she was pregnant, and he didn't know, and she didn't tell him. So now fast forward 7 years. So now 7 years passed, and Gemma and Lorenzo showed up at her door with a bullet wound. So she's like, "What are you doing here?" And then he couldn't talk. So then she saw the blood, so she ended up calling one of her friends to bring her supplies because she works at a hospital, and she removed the bullet. And then she said, "Okay, you could rest and everything. I'll call my brother to come get me." So he called his brother, come get him. He's a twin. His brother name is Lincoln. And his brother come and got him and everything, and that was good, right? So they were all talking and everything. So her friend Shelly came to see her the next day because she didn't go to work. And when Shelly walked into the house, she found her basically on the ground trying to basically take her last breath. So someone broke into the house and attacked her. So Shelly called Lincoln, which is Lorenzo's twin brother, and they met at the hospital. So Gemma told them what happened, and long story short, Lincoln knew who attacked Gemma. So Lorenzo was like, okay, he's out for revenge now, and he's know what to do. But throughout the book, you get to see Robert coming back into Lorenzo. Like he would just like space out. He would just start acting weird and wondering what is going on. One minute he's here, the next minute he's not. But you never in that the first part of the book never heard that Gemma had that issue. So around then they kept on going and they were talking, and then Lorenzo started protecting her, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna protect you, stay at my house and everything. So she was staying at the house, she was hiding the boys from him, and then Lorenzo found out. He ended up asking someone to do a background check on her and found out that she has two boys, and the boys were twins. And then she finally told him about the boys. But when she told him about the boys, he already had went to his own and saw them, and I realized that they were his kids because they looked like him and Lincoln. So he introduced himself to the boys. I think they were Gino and Giovanni. Oh my God, those boys, like, they are so smart. They are ridiculous smart. Anyway, they're very protective of their mother, and then they met on the slick on the slide without Gemma even knowing. So when they finally came together on Christmas Day, Gemma, she couldn't handle it. She was so overwhelmed, and like she basically had a panic attack. And guess who was coming through? It was Georgette through her panic attack. So now Georgette's coming through her second life. So around the whole time, Shelly was still there the whole time, and Shelly was like her adopted sister and slash best friend. So eventually Shelly was like, rest, and I'll tell you everything around the same, what's going on. Around the same time when Gemma was having her issue, I'm sorry, not Lincoln, Lorenzo, too many brothers. Lorenzo was having his issue too, because Robert was coming in at the same time. So they both were out of it. They were out of it for a full day and a half. They're like the boat spirit takes over Lincoln. Oh, sorry, I keep on saying Lincoln. Robert's spirit took over Lorenzo, and then Georgette's spirit took over Gemma. So they were out of it for a day and a half. The spirits were trying to reconnect so they could become one again, so they could reunite and everything. So a day and a half passed, and then and when they woke up, Shelly was at the end of the bed. So Shelly was like, I have some explaining to do. Like, okay, what's going on? So Shelly basically opened a can of worms. Shelly told them that she was a psychic and that she met Robert when he was older and he wanted to reconnect it with Georgette's spirit. And she said that I can't get you to reconnect with Georgette now because I can't find her spirit, but I'll do my best to reconnect you in the future when your spirit trans carried over. So he said okay. Around the same time, we found out that Shelley and Georgette are actually sisters. So they're blood sisters, and the mother didn't like Georgette because something of the sort. Either she looked like the father or the father left her. So the mother was a psychic too and put a curse on Georgette. Excuse me. So Georgette was never allowed to be happy being reincarnated. So every time Georgette or Robert reincarnated, they could never meet each other in the other life. So they were like, okay, what is going on? So then Shelly finally tell them that because she's cursed, she could never be happy and be reincarnated. So then they were like, okay, so what happened this time? Why can we be reincarnated now? It turned out that because Lorenzo had break up with Gemma when she was 19, that broke the cycle because she didn't wasn't able to be in a happy ending then, and Lorenzo basically broke the spirit by breaking up with her, so she didn't have to break up with anybody and she didn't have to be miserable because she was already miserable when Lorenzo broke up with her. So that's what Shelley said. Anyway, long story short, I'm sorry for guys. So it was very interesting. So I keep on giving you more and more details about the story. Anyway, long story short, now they're trying to get their spirit back together. So they're all back together now. They're remembering all their experience of how many times they were married, how many times they came back, who was divorced and who was never happy. So they would tell each other everything from the 1980s up to present. And then I don't think the boys had any spirit events, but eventually they finally did get their happily ever after. They did get married, and they had a small wedding, just immediate family and friends, and it was just so good. It was a very, it's like it had a little bit of suspense and drama with it, with who's after Lorenzo and why did they attack Shelly, not Shelly, Gemma. So that we get to that mystery solved also in the end. But the entire book was basically about Robert and Georgette coming back together from the 18th centuries to now. So to me, this was more of a romance novel than a regular mystery novel, because it's just so hard, like, to think of like two broken spirit coming back together to finally get that happy ending, the happily ever after that they really needed. So guys, I really enjoyed this book. I'm sorry if I gave you too much detail in the book, but I just was so fascinated by the whole reincarnation, and like how the spirit keep on traveling together, and traveling from one person to the next person until they could finally reconnect and have their happily ever after. So check it out. Again, it's No Better Love by Elisabeth. Okay? Bye, guys.